Hi, I'm Eulalia, and last weekend, my sister threw a glass of red wine in my face, in front of our entire family. She called me trash, and I didn't say a word, because I didn't need to. My billionaire husband walked in, and the truth followed behind him. But this didn't start at that table. This started years ago, with silence, with erasure, with being the daughter no one believed in. So now, tell me. What happens when the forgotten one stops staying quiet? It was one of those South Carolina afternoons when the air felt heavy, sweet with magnolia and humidity. I parked a few blocks from the restaurant and walked the rest of the way, partly to calm my nerves. The sunlight glinted off the newly polished windows, my design, my glasswork, though no one here would remember that. Inside, the place pulsed with noise. Laughter bounced off the marble floors. The clink of wine glasses and heels clicking over tile filled the space. I caught my reflection in a mirrored column, subtle makeup, light blue dress, hair pulled back. I looked like a guest, not the woman who'd drawn these walls on paper a decade ago. A hostess smiled at me, polite but distracted. "Are you here for the Hartley event?" "Yes," I said. "Family." She handed me a glossy brochure. The cover gleamed with gold lettering. Hartley Legacy, celebrating our first flagship. My heart fluttered a little as I opened it. Page after page listed names, founders, partners, creative directors, donors. I scanned for mine. I went line by line, even flipped to the back page. But it wasn't there. Not Eulalia Hartley, not anywhere. The chatter around me seemed to dim, though I knew it hadn't. My throat tightened. Maybe it was an oversight. Maybe they'd forgotten to update the print version. I wanted to believe that. Across the room, I spotted my sister Isolda, tall, elegant, her blonde hair in loose waves that screamed salon perfection. She was surrounded by photographers, smiling like the queen of some glittering kingdom. She'd always known how to hold attention, how to make space bend around her. I tried to move toward her, but an older cousin intercepted me. "Lally, you made it!" She looked genuinely surprised. "It's sweet of you to come, even though you didn't have much to do with this place." Her words stung in that soft, polite way Southerners perfect. I forced a smile. "Oh, I had a little something to do with it." "Oh, bless your heart," she said, the way people say when they don't really mean it. Then she excused herself to take a photo with Isolda. I stepped aside, pretending to admire the decor. My decor, the oak beams I'd fought for. The lighting plan that used natural diffusion so the space glowed without harshness. Every inch of it whispered my name, even if no one else did. Someone brushed my shoulder. "Lally, honey!" Isolda's voice cut through the noise. She pulled me into an air hug, cold perfume and colder words. "You came. I wasn't sure you'd show after that little mix-up." "Mix-up?" I asked. She gave a thin smile. "The program. I told the team to add your name at the last minute. Must have slipped through." I looked at her, trying to decide whether to believe her. Her eyes glittered, amused. She loved moments like this, tiny cruelties delivered with a grin. "It's fine," I said quietly. "I'm just here to celebrate." "That's the spirit," she said, already turning away. "Try not to hide in a corner like last time." I found a seat near the back, away from the spotlight. The crowd buzzed louder as waiters passed trays of hors d'oeuvres. Someone had brought in a local news crew. The event was supposed to honor the visionaries of the Hartley family. My stomach churned. I could already imagine who those visionaries would be. When the speeches began, Isolda took the stage, microphone in hand. "Welcome, everyone, to this momentous day. Our family has worked tirelessly to build something that represents excellence, creativity, and heart." Applause followed. She thanked our parents, her husband, even the interior design consultant she'd hired last month. "And of course," she added, pausing dramatically, "let's not forget my sister Eulalia, the baby of the family, here to eat and drink and look adorable." The laughter that followed was like a slap. Cameras flashed. Someone near me whispered, "She's funny." I smiled tightly, staring at my napkin until the lines blurred. It wasn't the first time she'd reduced me to the family pet, but for some reason, this time felt different. The laughter lingered too long, echoing like something permanent. After the toast, people mingled again. I moved toward the edge of the crowd, my heart hammering. Every instinct told me to leave, but something heavier pinned me there. A need to see it through, maybe to prove I could. Near the main hallway, I noticed a display wall showcasing the evolution of Hartley hospitality. Dozens of framed photos lined the wall, construction shots, old menus, family portraits. But where my original architectural sketches once hung, there was now a glossy poster reading Isolde Hartley, brand visionary. I reached out, tracing the faint outline where the old frame had been. A small nail hole remained, the only mark of what used to be mine. For a moment, I could almost hear my father's voice when we'd opened this place 10 years ago. "You've got the eye for structure, Lally. Don't let anyone make you small." The memory hurt more than the laughter had. I stepped outside into the garden. The air was cooler there, softer. The fountain gurgled lazily as guests lingered with champagne glasses, oblivious. A child ran past, chasing a balloon. I sat on a bench beneath the oak tree that shaded the terrace, breathing in the night-blooming jasmine. How many times had I let this happen? I'd told myself for years that family meant patience, forgiveness, understanding. But maybe that was just another word for surrender. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no messages. Cassian was in New York that weekend for meetings. He'd offered to fly back, but I'd told him I'd be fine. I'd wanted to face them alone. I thought I could handle it. A waiter passed by, offering water. I thanked him, then glanced back toward the building. Through the windows, I saw Isolde laughing with our mother. Her hand rested on Mom's shoulder, picture perfect. Mom beamed up at her like sunlight. It hit me then. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was intent. They hadn't accidentally left me out. They'd decided I didn't belong in their version of the story. My jaw tightened. I stood, brushing the hem of my dress. Somewhere inside, the music swelled as the next toast began, but I was already walking away. As I reached the gate, I looked back one last time at the building I'd helped bring to life. Its lights shimmered like something holy, but I knew better now. It wasn't a cathedral, it was a shrine to selective memory. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty for wanting to leave it behind. I didn't make it far from the restaurant before the sea breeze met me, sharp with the scent of salt and grilled shrimp. My car was just ahead, parked under the soft glow of a street lamp. For a moment, I thought of getting in and driving away, back to my home, where silence wasn't used as punishment. But then I heard my mother's voice from inside, light and cheery, announcing that dinner would be served shortly. I paused. Leaving would have felt like surrender, like confirming I didn't belong. And that was exactly what they wanted. So, I turned back. Slowly. The servers were now placing name cards on the tables, polishing silverware with gloved hands. The terrace was beautiful, candles flickering, napkins folded like orchids. Each table led up to the main stage, where Isolde sat, radiant and loud, surrounded by admirers and cameras. I began searching for my seat, moving from table to table. Names lined the cards like a family tree. Hartley, Hartley, Hartley. Cousins, uncles, business partners, but no Eulalia. Then, tucked beside a pillar near the swinging kitchen door, I saw it. My name, Eulalia, in fine script. Alone at a small, wobbling table next to the outdoor trash bins, a sad bouquet of wilting hydrangeas sat in the middle, almost mocking me. A waiter nearby, young and clearly nervous, glanced over, then looked away quickly, but not before I saw it. Pity. "Ma'am," he said, stepping closer. "Are you sure this is your seat?" I didn't even flinch. "That's my name on the card." He opened his mouth to say something more, but stopped. Just nodded and walked away. From where I sat, I could see the backs of heads, my family, laughing and sipping champagne. Isolde raised her glass mid-sentence and caught my eye. She smiled, that smug, deliberate smile people wear when they know they've won. She did this. Of course she did. I sat down anyway. The chair rocked unevenly on the stone. Every few minutes, the kitchen door swung open and out came trays of food, bags of trash, bottles clinking in bins. "Really out with the trash," someone whispered behind me. I turned my head just enough to see Isolde's teenage son grinning at his cousin, 17 and already fluent in cruelty. I didn't react. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. A waiter approached. "Sparkling water, ma'am?" I nodded. "No wine." "You're handling this better than most would," he said gently. "It's not about them," I replied, voice low. "It's about grace under fire." He nodded once and moved on. Jazz floated from hidden speakers. Conversations hummed from the center tables. Vacation homes, IPOs, European art fairs, a world I was adjacent to, but never quite inside. I straightened my posture and sipped slowly. They wanted me to feel small, to disappear quietly, ashamed. But I'd done that before, hadn't I? The scent of jasmine drifted in from the garden. And just like that, I was 8 again. My sisters had shared a birthday cake, pink roses, white frosting. I'd stood waiting for my slice, but by the time it got to me, there was only a plate of crumbs. Mom had crouched beside me, brushed back my hair, and said, "You're not a spotlight kind of girl, sweetie. Let your sisters shine." Then handed me the leftovers. A taste, but never the whole thing. That's what I'd been given all my life. I blinked away the memory. Nothing had changed. The settings were fancier now, the cruelty more refined, but the message was the same. I pulled out my phone and stared at the blank screen for a beat. Then I took a photo, a single frame, my name card, the shadow of the trash bin, the soft blur of candlelight from the party beyond. No caption. I sent it to Cassian. The delivered check turned blue in seconds. He didn't reply, but he didn't have to. I knew he saw me. Across the terrace, the boys were whispering again. "She's texting Uncle Cassian," one snickered. "Maybe he'll buy her a real seat next time." Let them laugh. I folded my napkin slowly, adjusted the strap on my purse, and let my gaze wander. Everyone here was playing their part in Isolde's show. Smiles, applause, polite deception, but I wasn't in her script anymore. Another waiter passed by with appetizers. I declined. The food would taste like humiliation. What stung wasn't the trash can. It was the repetition, the way they always found new ways to remind me I didn't belong, that I was optional, spare. I inhaled deeply. The trash bin clanked as a staff member rolled it out. The smell of lemon cleaner mingled with sour wine and food waste. But something shifted in me. Clarity. They had written this scene carefully. They wanted me isolated, diminished. But they forgot something. I had survived worse. I turned my phone face down and reached for the edge of my glass. The bubbles inside rose gently to the surface, resilient, persistent. All my life I'd been told to stay calm, be the bigger person, but I'd misunderstood that advice. Grace wasn't silence. It was strength without spectacle. The music softened. Dessert was served. Isolde's favorite, lemon chiffon. Fitting. I didn't move. I stayed right there, beside the trash, because this time I wasn't shrinking from it. I was witnessing it, documenting it. The waiter returned, and I caught his sleeve lightly. "Could I borrow a pen?" He blinked, surprised. "A pen?" "Yes," I said, calm but clear. "Just for a moment." When he brought it, I turned over my name card. On the back, I wrote 4 words. "Remember who you are." I tucked it into my purse. The sun had dipped lower, casting soft, golden light across the terrace. A breeze swept through, cooler now. They'd look over soon, checking if I'd cracked. But not today. I sat straighter. I smiled. Not a mask, not a defense. A real smile. And because they could seat me by the trash, but they couldn't define me anymore. I wasn't the girl begging for crumbs. I was becoming the woman who wouldn't ask again, and they were about to learn that. By the time I returned to the inn, Charleston had quieted into a kind of hushed stillness. Gas lamps lined King Street, their soft flicker melting into the warm summer air, casting amber glows on cobblestones that had seen too much history to care about one more family unraveling. I drove in silence, the occasional buzz of the radio barely audible beneath the steady hum of tires. The gala was over, the illusions were gone, and I no longer pretended to belong. When I stepped into my room, I didn't bother turning on all the lights. One lamp by the bed was enough. Its warm, golden shade painted a quiet circle over the hardwood floor. I kicked off my heels and sat on the edge of the bed. My feet throbbed, not from walking, but from bracing against everything I'd held back that evening. My dress, once crisp and elegant, now hung with the limpness of an event I wanted to erase. Across the room, my reflection stared back at me from the mirror. Mascara faintly smudged. Hair loosening from its careful pins. A version of myself that looked like she had weathered not just a night, but a war no one else had seen. My phone buzzed. Cassian's name lit up the screen. I watched it pulse once, twice, then fade. I didn't pick up. He had already seen the photo I'd sent earlier, the nameplate beside the trash. That had been enough. Tonight, I didn't need questions or comfort. I needed stillness. I reached for the untouched glass of wine I'd poured before the gala. The condensation had long evaporated. I lifted it briefly, then set it down. My chest felt tight, like I'd been holding a breath that had turned into habit. To steady myself, I began unpacking. A ritual, nothing more. Dresses, laptop, a folder of unfinished blueprints. And then, beneath it all, nestled in the corner of the suitcase, I saw it. My old sketchbook. The sight of it made my breath catch. Brown leather cover. Worn edges. A relic from when I still believed the world would reward effort and originality. I paused, then slowly, I opened it, page by page. Rough sketches, pencil-smudged notes. Floor plans I had once believed in. Somewhere near the center, folded between two blank pages, was a loose sheet of paper. I unfolded it. The air left my lungs. It was that sketch. The original floor plan of what would become Isolde's table. Every line, every proportion, every thoughtful curve, it was unmistakably mine. And there, in the lower right corner, E. Hartley, 2008. My fingers trembled. I was 21 again, rain outside my college dorm in Savannah. I'd been doodling layouts in between mouthfuls of instant ramen. I wasn't aiming for greatness, just imagining spaces where people could feel connected, where design didn't isolate but invited. I remembered the knock at the door. My father stood there, raincoat still damp. He said Mom had sent him to check on me. He noticed the sketch on my desk, picked it up, asked what it was. Just an idea, I'd said. A restaurant built on shared spaces. He smiled faintly. Your sister's been talking about opening something new. Maybe she'll get a kick out of this. Then he folded the paper and slid it into his pocket. I thought nothing of it at the time. Years later, when Isolde's table opened, I walked in and stopped cold. The curved entry, the lighting flow, the central open bar. It felt too familiar. I searched my sketchbook when I got home. That page was missing. I convinced myself it was coincidence. Until last Thanksgiving, Cassian and I had flown in late. My father was in his study, thumbing through old papers. I went in to say hello. That's when I saw it, half hidden behind books on his shelf. A frame. My sketch. Labeled, Concept Study, 2008. My name had been crossed out. His ink had buried my initials, but I could still see them if I looked close enough. He'd smiled when he noticed me holding it. Oh, that old thing. Never used it, he said, sliding it back into the shadows. I hadn't confronted him. I'd wanted to believe he forgot where it came from, that it wasn't betrayal. But now, with the sketch across my lap, the truth was undeniable. They knew. They had taken my work, my vision, and made it the cornerstone of their empire. I wasn't forgotten. I had been erased. I ran my hand over the faded pencil lines. The curves were still elegant. The space still lived. There was a smudge in the upper right corner, where my hand must have rested as I shaded the archway. It felt like touching an old scar. I picked up my phone. I opened the camera and took a photo, letting the lamplight illuminate every detail. Then I typed a message to Cassian. The restaurant you're helping expand. This was my work. 2008. No explanation, no apology. It wasn't about proof anymore. It was about truth, about claiming what had always been mine. I sent it. Then I waited. Not for validation. just to feel something shift. The reply never came, but the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt honest. For the first time in years, I wasn't diminished by what they chose to forget. I saw myself as I was, the mind they buried, the genius they borrowed from, the daughter they never credited. I had always been the architect. Now, I was no longer silent, and that changed everything. The sun hadn't fully risen when I stirred awake, my phone screen still glowing faintly on the nightstand. Sleep had been a luxury I couldn't afford. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw that sketch again, the one that changed everything, the one without my name. Cassian hadn't called, but somehow, it wasn't the silence that stung. His silence was different, thoughtful, not dismissive, like he was piecing things together, not pulling away. Outside my window, Charleston was already buzzing. Cars hummed past, birds shrieked from rooftops, and the sticky heat of another southern morning crept in through the curtains. I showered and dressed with mechanical precision, my hands trembling just enough to betray me. There was a brunch at the Roosevelt Grand. My father insisted I show up, despite last night's unraveling. "It's family," he had said. "You'll be fine." Fine. That word meant nothing anymore. By 10:30 a.m., I was seated near the edge of the ballroom, the chandeliers casting golden shadows across linen-covered tables. Soft piano music trickled in from the corner. The scent of buttered pastries and perfume mingled in the air. The family, of course, occupied the center. Isolde sat where she always did, centered, poised, the spotlight finding her like gravity. Her dress matched the table's floral arrangement. Her smile was practiced. Her crown, invisible but undeniable. I had hoped to go unnoticed. But my father caught my eye and motioned for me to come closer. Reluctantly, I moved toward their table. He patted my shoulder as I passed. "Good girl," he murmured. The words made me feel small. Midway through the meal, he stood and tapped his spoon against a glass. "Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from someone who's been with us from the very beginning. Eulalia, sweetheart, would you say a few words?" My fork slipped. A clatter, a hush. I froze. I wasn't told I'd be speaking. I wasn't ready. Isolde turned her head slightly, just enough for me to see her smile. It didn't reach her eyes. "Really, Dad?" she muttered. My mother placed a hand over hers. "Let her speak," she said, as though giving me permission. The walk to the podium felt like crossing a battlefield barefoot. The microphone glinted in the spotlight, tall and imposing. I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall behind it. I looked calm. I wasn't. "Good morning," I began. My voice echoed softly, and for a moment, I found balance. I wasn't expecting to speak today, but that seems fitting. In this family, the most meaningful things are rarely planned. A few polite chuckles rippled through the crowd. I steadied. When we first dreamed of creating spaces that brought people together, I was 21, sketching floor plans on napkins between lectures. I believed then, and still do, that design, like family, is about connection. I paused. And connection is messy. It requires patience, forgiveness, sometimes starting over. Isolde's smile had frozen. Her fingers clutched her glass tightly, knuckles pale. "We don't always get credit for the bricks we lay, but we build anyway. Because family..." Then silence. My voice disappeared. I blinked, tapped the mic. "Hello?" Nothing. No feedback. No static. Just absence. My gaze shot to the AV booth. A man in black raised his hand and dragged it across his neck. The universal sign, "Cut it." Gasps rose softly. A whisper here. A snort there. "Guess that's enough from the quiet one," someone muttered. Laughter. Not cruel, just careless. I turned to my father. He stared down at his coffee. Isolde swirled her drink, her lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. I stood there, frozen, holding the dead microphone like it could still save me. My voice had been erased, not by accident, by design. I nodded faintly. "Thank you," I whispered to no one. And then I stepped down. No applause, no acknowledgement, just the soft clink of silverware and my mother adjusting her bracelet to avoid meeting my eyes. Back at the table, I sat in silence, the humiliation sitting beside me like a shadow. Minutes later, the doors opened. Cassian walked in. He scanned the room and found me instantly. He crossed the floor with measured steps and took the empty seat beside me. His hand found mine under the table. "What happened?" he asked. I forced a smile. "Just a glitch." He studied my trembling hands. "Eulalia." "It's fine," I repeated. A lie, but necessary. His jaw clenched. His gaze drifted toward Isolde, who was busy pretending to be charmed by our cousin's story. After the brunch, I slipped onto the balcony, desperate for air. The harbor gleamed in the sunlight, boats drifting lazily across the water. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, letting the breeze pull away the tension. Behind me, the door opened. That familiar scent, Isolde's signature perfume, arrived first. "That was awkward," she said lightly. "Tech issues, huh?" I turned slowly. "Don't insult me." She blinked. "I'm sorry?" "I saw your assistant. I know the signal." Her mask slipped for half a second, just long enough. "You're imagining things," she said coolly. "You always do this, Lally. So dramatic. Not everyone's out to get you." I stepped closer. "I know what you did last night. And what you did 15 years ago." Her eyes flickered. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "You let them believe that design was yours," I said. "You used it. You built everything on it. And you thought I'd disappear." She smiled, but her hand trembled slightly as she set her mimosa down. "You really need help," she whispered. "You're embarrassing yourself." "Maybe," I said, "but not today." I turned and walked away. Inside, Cassian was watching from across the room. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. One look told him everything. I sat down, picked up my coffee, and sipped it calmly. The performance resumed around me. Laughter, chatter, clinking glasses. But something had shifted. In me. I wasn't the quiet one anymore. After brunch, I wandered away from the crowd and ended up in a quiet hallway at the Roosevelt. It wasn't planned. I just walked until the noise faded and the guilt got quieter. The hallway was narrow and dim, with vintage wallpaper and a tired carpet that soaked up sound. The only thing I heard was the soft hum of the air conditioning and faint laughter drifting from the dining room. I sat on a bench with my half-empty coffee cup, staring at the surface like it might tell me who I was. That muted microphone moment kept looping in my mind. Isolde's smug smile, the silence after my voice cut out, the guests pretending not to notice, and worst of all, my father's silence. No defense, no glance in my direction, just a throat clear and a shift in his seat. I didn't cry. I just sat still, every emotion settling into a thick knot in my chest. Footsteps approached, slow, familiar. Cassian. He crouched beside me, holding out a paper cup. "Chamomile," he said. "You look like you could use it." I took it, murmured a soft thanks, and held it with both hands. He didn't speak right away. That's what I loved about him. He didn't rush in to fix things. He just sat beside me and waited for the storm to pass. "I shouldn't have gone up there," I finally said. "You were asked," he replied. "You spoke with grace. That's never the wrong choice." I gave him a tired smile. Grace doesn't mean much when people just laugh behind their napkins. Cassian's jaw tightened. He reached up, gently tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "Do you want me to say something?" His question wasn't casual. He wasn't offering comfort. He was offering war. I shook my head slowly. "Not yet." He accepted that, but I saw the flicker in his eyes. Cassian was fire-wrapped in calm. And today, his fuse was shortening. When we returned to the dining room, the luncheon was in full swing. Laughter rose louder than before. Wine flowed. Plates clinked. My father sat at the head of the table, looking as though nothing had happened. My mother stared down at her salmon, pretending I didn't exist. We took our seats at the end. I didn't look up, but I smelled Isolde's perfume. Too sweet, too sharp. She leaned into the spotlight like it was made just for her. "Can I just say," she began, tapping her glass with her nail. How proud I am of everyone for making this weekend such a success. A few toasts were raised, smiles, nods. Then she twisted the knife. Even when we have a few rough edges, you know what they say? Trash always finds a way to float back to the surface. Laughter. Not loud, but loud enough. My fork slipped, the metal scratching against porcelain. A few eyes turned. I didn't meet them. Cassian reached under the table and gave my hand a single soft squeeze. When he pulled away, I saw his shoulders square, spine straightening. He stood. The room went silent. He tapped his glass twice. Crystal rang through the room like a cold wind. "Let me be absolutely clear," he said, voice even but unmistakably strong. No one calls my wife trash." Every fork froze midair. Every conversation died. Not as a joke, not in whispers, not ever. The words hung in the air like thunder. Isolde blinked. "Cassian," she said sweetly. "It was just a joke." "No." His gaze locked on hers. A joke is supposed to make people laugh, not flinch. Someone dropped a spoon. The sound echoed like punctuation. "You've spent years trying to erase her," he said, voice quiet but cutting. "You took her designs, her ideas. You built your career on her brilliance and never once said her name." Gasps, shuffling. My father stiffened. "Cassian." He held up a hand. "No, this ends now." He turned to Isolde again. "She kept the original sketch. Your father kept a copy. The world will see both." My breath caught. I had never planned to reveal that. Not here, not like this. But it was too late. Cassian had chosen this moment. Isolde's face paled. "You're turning this into a spectacle." Cassian didn't flinch. "You turned it into one the moment you humiliated her in front of everyone." Silence, thick. Then my father finally spoke. His voice was tired. "Eulalia, you should have come to me." I looked at him. "I did. Once." He had no response. I stood, chair scraping the floor. "I'm done being quiet." Cassian reached for my hand. Warm, steady. No one moved. And then, life resumed. Barely. A throat cleared. Glasses clinked. But nothing felt the same. As we walked away, I looked back at Isolde. Her perfect facade was cracking. She looked like someone who just realized the mirror had turned against her. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. The truth had landed, and truth lingers like smoke, choking before it clears. The room held its breath. It was as if time itself had stilled. Every fork paused midair, every word choked back. A chandelier swayed gently above, humming, the sound eerie in the silence. Far down the table, someone dragged a spoon across porcelain. It felt louder than it should have. Cassian stood beside me, composed, though I could feel the tension in his posture. Across the table, Isolde's hand clutched her wineglass so tightly I half expected it to shatter. Her eyes met mine, wild, furious, unmasked. "Don't look at her," Cassian whispered, barely audible. But I did. I met her gaze and didn't look away. The moment stretched. No one dared to speak. Even our father, always opinionated, always loud, sat motionless, his shoulders drawn inward. Then came the sound of a chair scraping. Sharp. Final. Isolde stood, her voice shaking with rage. "You think you're above us? That marrying him makes you matter?" I said nothing. She sneered. "You're still trash, Eulalia." "Just dressed in designer." Gasps echoed across the room. Someone whispered, "Did she just?" Before I could even react, her hand snatched a glass of red wine. Cabernet. Deep. Rich. Dangerous. She flung it. The wine hit me square in the face. The gasp in the room felt like thunder. The glass clinked onto the table. My dress, my hands, the pristine floor, stained with crimson. The scent overwhelmed me. Dry, sharp, expensive. Cassian shot up from his chair, rage flashing in his eyes. But I raised a hand. No. He froze. Everyone did. I reached for the linen napkin, wiped my cheek, and set it back down with slow precision. That, I said evenly, was your last attempt to break me. Isolde's mouth twitched, but no words came. I looked at her, soaked dress and all, and felt no shame. I spent years trying to earn respect from this family, but I understand now. You can't teach respect to people who don't value it, she laughed bitterly. And you think this proves something? Yes. I gestured at my ruined gown. It proves I was right to leave. All around us, guests watched in stunned silence. A few held their phones, unsure if they should record. Even our mother sat frozen, hand gripping the edge of the tablecloth like it might anchor her in place. Cassian's voice broke the hush. It's time for you to go, Isolde. She scoffed. Go? This is our family's restaurant. He didn't flinch. Then you should have acted like family. She turned to our father, eyes pleading. He didn't meet them. I stepped forward. Each movement was deliberate, controlled. I once thought silence kept the peace, I said, voice steady. But silence built on humiliation isn't peace. It's surrender. Someone at the table murmured, That's right. Isolde growled, Spare me the moral lecture. You're the same pathetic girl with a rich husband. I looked at her, smiling slightly. Then why are your hands shaking? She blinked, caught off guard. I reached behind me for my shawl, ruined now, stained with red. I folded it and placed it beside her untouched plate. Keep it, I said softly. It suits you. A ripple of whispers followed. Cassian moved beside me, a firm hand resting on my back. But I wasn't done. I turned to the room. For years, I've been erased from speeches, sidelined in photos, dismissed at every turn. But since you're all watching now, maybe it's time you see what I've built. Isolde's scoff was high-pitched, nervous. Another monologue? I didn't respond. Instead, Cassian handed me my phone. I didn't unlock it. I just held it. She knew. Her bravado slipped for a second. You'll see, I said calmly. The tension in the room grew thick. Even the air felt tight. Our father looked pale. He knew too. He had kept that sketch I made, the one everyone said was just a phase. I never wanted a fight, I said to him. I just wanted to be respected. He opened his mouth. Eulalia, don't, I interrupted. You chose your silence. Cassian's voice came next, quiet but firm. We're done here. We turned toward the door, but Isolde wasn't finished. You think walking out makes you right? She shouted. You're ruining my reputation. I stopped, turning just enough to meet her eyes. I didn't ruin your name. You did. And that was it. She didn't move. She just stood there, trembling, while everyone around her stared, not with admiration, but with judgment. Cassian and I stepped into the corridor. The hallway was cooler, quieter. I inhaled deeply, the smell of wine still clinging to my skin. He handed me his handkerchief. I shook my head. Let it stay. I want to remember. He looked at me gently. You're trembling. No, I said, eyes forward. Not anymore. Outside, the light was changing. Late afternoon sun spilled across the floor, catching on the red stains across my dress. It looked like art, like war paint. Cassian reached for my hand. You did something incredible back there. I smiled faintly. No, I just stopped letting them write my story. And deep down, I knew it was over. This wasn't humiliation. This was rebirth. The wine didn't ruin me. It marked the moment I reclaimed myself. When Cassian and I stepped back into the dining room, the room fell into an eerie hush. Laughter and clinking glasses ceased. Conversations halted mid-sentence. All eyes shifted to us, then to each other in confusion. The tension that had been lurking beneath the surface now broke through like a crack in glass. Cassian's hand was firm on mine, guiding me to our seats at the long dining table. His face was composed, but the slight tick in his jaw revealed he was bracing for something. So was I. Isolde sat at the head, still dressed in her champagne silk dress, a picture of practiced elegance. But something in her expression had changed. Her smile was taut now, forced, and her eyes didn't shine. They glared. "Ah," she said, lifting her wine glass just slightly. "And here we are, just in time for the next course." Her voice carried, silk-wrapped in sarcasm. No one laughed. They all sensed it, the shift in the air, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks open. She turned to the room, her voice smoothing into performance mode. "As I was saying, we celebrate the success of Hartley Hospitality tonight, a business built on vision, discipline, and sacrifice. Some of us know how much sacrifice that takes, even if we had to do it in the shadows." She didn't look at me directly, but the venom was unmistakable. Cassian cleared his throat. "Actually," he said, his tone calm but cutting through like a scalpel. "Before dessert, I think there's something more important to share." Isolde froze, her smile faltering. "Oh?" she said, eyebrows arched. "And what might that be, dear?" He reached into the sleek black briefcase that had been resting against his chair and pulled out a thick folder. The sound of it hitting the table echoed like a gavel drop. Slowly, deliberately, he slid it across the table to our father. My father stared at it, confused. "What's this?" Cassian stood. "It's a record of acquisition. 2 months ago, I purchased 60% of Hartley Hospitality's shares from private investors and silent partners. Effective immediately, I am the majority owner." He tapped the folder. "The name on the deed is now mine." A gasp rippled across the room. Forks clattered against plates. Somewhere at the far end, someone choked on their wine. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "Cassian, what?" Isolde sprang from her seat so fast her chair nearly tipped. Her voice was shrill. "What kind of joke is this?" She yanked the folder toward her and flipped through the contents with trembling fingers. Page after page of signed contracts, shareholder agreements, legal statements. Her hand hovered over the signatures. "No," she hissed. "No. This isn't real. This is fraud. You forged this. This is illegal." Cassian met her fury with cool detachment. "It's all verified. Every document was notarized. Every stakeholder signed off. I've spent months preparing this." He tilted his head slightly. "I didn't want it to be public, but you left me no choice." "You can't do this to me," she snapped, her voice rising with each word. "I built this brand from the ground up. You weren't even here in the beginning. You built it by stepping on people, by pushing others down to stay standing. That ends now." Her eyes found me. She pointed a trembling finger. "Is this your doing?" she spat. "You whispered in his ear, didn't you? You always wanted to take my place." I didn't flinch. I stood. "I didn't have to whisper," I said evenly. "Your actions spoke loud enough, to everyone." A soft click came from a corner. A phone camera was recording. I spotted a woman, local press, scribbling furiously in a notebook. Eyes around the room darted between us, unsure who to support, too stunned to move. Isolde's fury gave way to disbelief. "You don't belong here," she whispered. "You never did. You're not part of this family." I met her gaze. "You should have known. The quiet ones remember everything." She recoiled as if slapped. Her shoulders crumpled, and the weight of the room bore down on her. Slowly, she sank back into her chair, color drained from her face. My father finally spoke. His voice was hollow. "Cassian, why didn't you tell us?" Cassian's voice was steady. "Because I wanted to give her a chance to change, to lead with integrity. But instead, she used her power to exclude, manipulate, and erase." The silence that followed was thicker than ever. It wasn't just about business. It was about everything that had been building for years. Resentment, favoritism, cruelty dressed as tradition. One of the uncles, silent until now, lifted his glass slightly toward Cassian. "To new leadership," he said under his breath. A few others murmured their agreement. I felt it in my chest, a quiet vindication, not triumph, not gloating, but release. A weight had shifted. Isolde stared at the documents as if they might change if she just stared hard enough. They didn't. Cassian sat again, calm, composed, while around him the room began to murmur, conversations in low tones, glances cast my way not with pity, but with a quiet kind of respect. No one toasted. No one cheered. This wasn't a celebration. It was a reckoning. The late afternoon sun spilled in through the tall windows, casting gold light and long shadows over the dining table. It illuminated her, slumped and shaking. It illuminated me, finally seen. She took everything from me once. Tonight, she lost something far more important. The moment we stepped back into the room, the atmosphere had shifted. It wasn't just tension anymore, it was anticipation. Thick, electric. Conversations hushed as we passed, eyes darting between me and the head of the room where the board still sat, waiting for the final act to unfold. I took my seat beside Cassian. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with the eerie calm before a storm. My dress still bore the faint stain from Isolda's outburst, but I didn't flinch or cover it. Let them see it. Let them remember it. The lights dimmed. A mechanical click echoed as someone pointed a remote at the giant screen behind the head table. The projector flickered once, then lit up, crisp and bright. Cassian's voice carried through the speakers, steady. Let's show them what Eulalia has really been doing these past 2 years. And just like that, silence swept over the room. The video started simply. Footage of me walking through community centers, rolled up blueprints in hand, laughing with local officials, examining old warehouses with renovation teams, then sweeping drone shots of revitalized neighborhoods, green parks nestled in urban corners, vibrant murals, housing units built with reclaimed materials. My name appeared discreetly in the bottom corner of the screen. The narration began, calm, factual, but unwavering. Eulalia Hartley Pierce, designer, advocate, builder, projects spanning Charleston to Greenville, each one focused on sustainability, accessibility, and inclusion. The room leaned in. Faces I'd known for years, some who'd barely spoken to me at family gatherings, others who once dismissed my work as idealistic, were now transfixed. Then came the voices, testimonies. A middle-aged woman appeared, the director of a local nonprofit. She could have charged double. But Eulalia worked with our budget and gave us more than we asked. A former intern, she never treated me like I was beneath her. She taught me. She believed in my ideas. A single father living in one of the housing units. That building saved my family. I didn't know who designed it until today. Each statement struck like a drumbeat, building momentum. Every story was another thread unraveling the glossy image Isolda had spun. And then, a final screen. Credits, Vision and Execution by Eulalia Hartley Pierce. In the silence that followed, the lights slowly returned. The chairman of the board stood, visibly moved. This, he said, his voice deliberate, is leadership. Quiet strength, lasting impact. We've had enough of image games and tantrums. It's time for integrity. The applause started slow, hesitant. Then it grew, real, powerful. Isolda shot up from her chair. Her voice cracked. No, this is all staged. You're manipulating them. This is trickery. I turned to her, my voice soft but clear. You built your legacy on your face. I built mine on my work. Her jaw dropped slightly. No words came. From the front, murmurs grew. One of the board members leaned toward another, whispering. The chairman tapped the mic again. In light of recent revelations and prior incidents, effective immediately, Isolda Hartley is relieved of all managerial responsibilities. Her voting shares are to be frozen pending a full investigation. Gasps rippled. Some applauded. Others sat stunned. Forks clinked as guests shifted in their seats, whispering into their phones, likely messaging colleagues or tweeting the unfolding drama. Isolda stood motionless, her breath shallow. You can't do this to me. She turned wildly, first to our mother, who sat rigid and expressionless, then to our father, who looked down at his glass of water, unmoving. Finally, her eyes landed on me. Please, she choked. Mom, Dad, say something. but no one did. Then she looked at Cassian, desperate. You're my husband. You promised to protect me. Cassian rose calmly, fixing his cufflink before responding. I protect those who protect others. It was only then that she broke. Her voice trembled. Eulalia, you can't just take it all back. We built this together. I looked her in the eye. I was building this long before I was allowed to put my name on it. Tears spilled down her face, and she sagged slightly, as if the weight of the truth finally crushed the polished image she'd fought to maintain. A reporter at the back whispered into a recorder. This is going to be front page by morning. Some clapped again, not out of celebration, but out of finality, like something had come full circle. The tension didn't dissolve, it cracked, like a mirror finally splintering after years of pressure. Isolde staggered back. She looked smaller now. Her empire, one she crafted with curated photos, shallow campaigns, and silencing others, wasn't collapsing in a dramatic scream. It was dissolving in silence. And I had given the final push. She had taken everything from me once, credit, opportunity, dignity. But now it was her turn to watch something slip away. And this time, no one was going to catch her. The ballroom doors shut behind us with a soft click, but the echoes of everything that had unfolded still clung to my skin like smoke. Cassian and I walked toward the car in silence. The air was heavy, the kind that hangs before a summer storm. My heels clicked against the stone path, his hand gently holding mine. Steady, warm, real. Neither of us looked back. The drive to the lake house was slow and quiet, the city lights fading behind us as trees framed the night. The only sounds were the rhythmic thrum of tires and the chirp of distant crickets. My head rested against the window. I watched stars blink into place, trying to anchor myself after everything that had happened. By the time we arrived, the sky had turned a deep velvet blue. Cassian carried a thermos and 2 mugs, and we walked down to the dock. The lake stretched out before us, still and endless, moonlight tracing silver paths across its surface. He poured the tea. I cupped the mug between my hands, letting the warmth seep into the cold places I didn't know I still carried. It's done, I whispered. But why doesn't it feel like a victory? Cassian took a long breath, then looked out over the lake. Because you loved them. You wanted more than justice. You wanted belonging. That word, belonging, hit like a stone in a still pond. I believed family meant protection, I said quietly. That love was supposed to mean safety. He turned to me, his voice low. But sometimes, love turns into duty, and duty into pain. I nodded, silent. The truth didn't sting. It just felt inevitable. We sat side by side, the world around us quiet. The lake lapped softly against the dock, and for a moment, there was peace in simply being. Then came the knock. It wasn't loud, just firm, enough to break the stillness. I stood, tea forgotten. Cassian followed me up the path toward the house. Another knock. I opened the door. It was her. Mother stood there, alone. Her face was bare. No makeup, no pearls, just fine lines, a tired expression, and a letter trembling in her hand. Her eyes flicked between me and Cassian. I watched you become what I always wanted them to be, she said finally, her voice thin. And I hated that it proved me wrong. She stepped forward, tentative. Her hand reached for my shoulder, resting lightly. I'm sorry. 2 words. 20 years too late. They didn't erase anything, but they did land somewhere deep, not on the wounds themselves, but on the space around them. It's late, I said softly. You can rest here tonight. She nodded and walked past me, disappearing down the hallway. I didn't follow. Instead, I turned to Cassian. We walked back outside, toward the garden. Dawn was beginning to break, just a sliver of gold on the horizon. In the morning, Mother insisted on a small brunch, no announcements, no photographers, just a few cousins seated around a plain table. Isolde wasn't there. No dramatic entrance, no storm of words, just quiet. For once, it didn't feel strained. No one gave speeches. No one asked me to. When we stood to leave, I waited for the usual resistance, a hand tugging at my sleeve, a voice urging me to stay. But there was only silence, and this silence, for the first time, felt like respect. Back home, I found a plain envelope on the doormat. I picked it up slowly, turning it in my hands. Cassian raised an eyebrow but said nothing. At the kitchen counter, I opened it. Inside was a letter from June, my old roommate from Savannah. Her handwriting was neat, familiar. She'd seen my story online. She wrote about how she used to be like Isolde, competitive, judgmental, blind to other women's pain. But life had humbled her, changed her. She now ran a nonprofit for women who'd felt invisible, erased, dismissed. She wanted me to join her. "Your story isn't just yours now," she wrote. "It's become a mirror, a bridge, a door ajar for others." I sat down. Read it again. I hadn't cried through everything, not in the courtroom, not at the confrontation, not even at Mother's apology. But this undid me. Cassian wrapped his arms around my shoulders. I leaned into him, letting the wave pass through me. Later that afternoon, we sat in front of my laptop. I had a website draft I'd left unfinished for months. Rise Up Network. Mentoring for survivors of family shame. I stared at the screen. Cassian smiled softly. "You wrote it for a reason." "I was afraid," I said. "Now you're ready." I clicked publish. The screen refreshed. The site was live. Outside, light flooded the room, morning in full bloom. It touched the walls, the table, our hands. It felt like something sacred. This story, my story, had once been a shield, then a sword. Now it was something else entirely, a seed. Cassian kissed my cheek. Let it grow. And I would. Because for the first time, I wasn't just trying to be seen. I was creating space so others could be, too. Sometimes the loudest victories come from the quietest strength. This story wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming your worth when the world tries to bury it. How many of us have been dismissed, underestimated, or labeled by our own family? And what would happen if we stopped shrinking and started standing tall? If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who was supposed to protect you? Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. More powerful family stories are coming your way. You're not alone.